Right now, unemployment and poverty, as we approach a half century since the war on poverty began, modern-day war on compassion continues, and today the Senate votes to restore long-term unemployment help. The question is, will it pass in the House, and have we won or lost the war on poverty? And then Obama singing the blues, the second-term blues, but he's got a lot of company at this pity party. Why so many presidents seem to lose their mojo in term two, and does history offer him any guidance on how to turn things around? And later, Wall Street's most dangerous relationship. We will introduce you to the former big money trader who says the Wall Street DC connection is the one that worries him the most. Now to worry you too at home. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks so much for joining us this Tuesday evening, January 7th. And we begin with the long-term unemployed. Just 3 days after Christmas, benefits expired for anyone out of work 27 weeks or more. The rationale, as Republicans explained, was that too much help would hurt and that keeping the money flowing to the long-term unemployed would deter them from seeking work. Well, today, Democrats look to turn the money back on and to change the debate.
I have cut expenses everywhere possible, and I am not just sitting home enjoying the good life. My cuts include heating my house to 58 degrees, wearing a hat and a coat to stay warm because oil is expensive. I have lost weight because food is expensive. As a single mother, I worked many different jobs and never asked for a handout, while I raised two wonderful boys.
Now, those comments, they came a short time after a Senate procedural vote that could be a first step towards a benefit extension package for the long-term unemployed. 6 Republican senators, they voted with Democrats to push the vote past a filibuster. But House Republicans remained opposed to an extension, saying it must be paid for with offsetting spending cuts, and any tax hikes or new revenues, those are off the table. Which is why the president hit the bully pulpit today, looking for help convincing House Republicans and trying to set straight the notion that helping the unemployed is hurting the unemployed.
Now, I've heard the argument that says extending unemployment insurance will somehow hurt the unemployed because it saps their motivation to get a new job. I really want to go at this for a second. That really sells the American people short. I can't name a time where I met an American who would rather have an unemployment check than the pride of having a job.
Now, one factor that may be working in the White House's favor here, and trust me, they've had a lot of bad news on a lot of other fronts, but on this issue, we talk about the so-called empathy gap. Even as the GOP poll numbers improve, and they are when it comes to showing compassion and concern for the public, they trailed Democrats big time on this by nearly 30 points. A lot of empathy on our panel, though, tonight. And first up, Republican strategist and co-founder of the New York meeting, O'Brien Murray, and to his left, in many ways, political journalist and author Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. And on the other side of the table, Andrew Whitman, senior political correspondent. All right, guys. Andrew, I'll start with you. We heard a lot of the speakers talking today before the president laid it out. And that woman went on to say that she had a kid fighting in Afghanistan right now. It was the faces of poor that weren't the poverty pimps, if you will, here that said, I'm every American and I'm not looking for a handout. I'm just at my end of the rope. I don't know how that translates, but if you believe the poll numbers, more of the public relates to that lady than to the argument that people are just jaking it, not wanting to get off the dime.
It's funny. It's one of those issues, and there's so many of them that seemingly we deal with on a day-to-day basis, that if you deal with it in the abstract, the arguments that helping the unemployed is actually hurting the unemployed, the Rand Paul argument, it makes some sense. But then when you personalize the story, when you put a face to it, when you put a name to it, when you tell people, and they relate stories of people who they know who have been out of work, it actually does hit home, and I think you get a change of perception. So when you're talking about the unemployed in general, oh, we got to be tough on them. But when you're talking about the unemployed people who you know, not easy. And
we've got some numbers that maybe the folks at home can take a look at some of these poll numbers, which just show that you've got, I think it's 56% of the public that has a family member who considers themselves poor. You've got more than a third of the public who has a direct relationship that has struggles either paying food or paying bills, paying tuition or whatever on a monthly basis. This is relatable. Where maybe not that long ago, it wasn't for a lot of folks. That this was the hidden poor. A lot of people say, this is getting tougher and tougher every month. I could see myself being unemployed for 27 weeks.
The bigger issue here is that this is a Band-Aid approach. The extension for unemployment expired, and what do we do now? We just put it in here and say, okay, we're going to take care of it for a stopgap for a period of time and face this issue again. At what point are we going to say to anybody who goes on unemployment, this is how long it lasts, and this is what we're going to do? And that's the challenge, because remember, men and women fall off of unemployment every day and then can't find jobs. And there are too many Americans right now that are unemployed and underemployed. And yes, there are people that will say, and I've said this on the set, if you are receiving unemployment at times, you have a somewhat disincentive sometimes to find jobs.
Really?
I've said this on the set, and what I'm clarifying in this is this. I've talked to HR people and so forth, and they will tell you if you have a job and you get a severance package, okay, and you're paid for 6 months because that was the agreement when you left your job, one of the things you really have to do is get back in the workforce as soon as you can. Because once you haven't done it, it's very challenging to get that job. Okay, what I'm saying is, Richard, I'm trying to...
But I'm not going to stop. I'm going to stop the filibuster for a second. They've already clarified that the unemployed right now, for every 3 unemployed, there's 1 job.
But
and
Richard,
then more than this,
I can't have this conversation unless I can finish my comment. I can't have this.
You got to get to it.
I'm getting that. My point is this: there has to be a plan in place to have this going on for a longer time than we currently have, but have it set and have it not keep on expiring, have it paid for, but also have education and have other opportunities for people to be retrained to get jobs they need.
Well, you sound
That's
like a
the
Democrat
challenge.
because these programs cost money.
But we need to just find out where the money comes from. You can't just open up the wallet and say, okay, fine, we keep on paying stuff. Let's have the offsets. Let's figure out where it comes.
Where do you want to cut from?
Let's figure out where it comes from.
No, where do you want to cut from? Is defense on the table?
Defense on the table?
Of course
Sure.
not.
Yeah,
of
sure,
course
come on.
not.
Sure it is.
Of course not. You know you can't touch those Republican goodies. You know that's off the table. You know, Richard, that all of these Americans, they're just taking and taking and taking. But you know what, Richard? This tough, with all due respect to my friend OB here, this tough love approach from Republicans, it honestly makes me want to throw up. Because this is not the American way. You saw the lady standing there with the president. People are at their wits' end. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yes, you have some that abuse the system. I'll grant you that. But most people just want an opportunity to work.
And on a political landscape, we're going to have this debate coming up. And just, if I'm a Republican right now, I want to talk about 2 words. I want to talk about health care as much as I can between now and November, okay? It's the underbelly for this president. It's a problem for Democrats. We can debate whether it's fair or not. But, Andrew, we're going to be talking about minimum wage. We're going to be talking about food stamps. In addition, obviously, to the unemployment extension, and it doesn't look right now that House Republicans are going to go along to get along on this. These 3 issues, whether they want to or not, they're going to keep coming up over and over again. And it's an election year with midterms in November.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Democrats are going to bring these issues up again and again and again and try to ring that bell as much as they can, the same way that Republicans are going to try to ring the health care bell in the exact same way. So, you know, Republicans are never going to have the stage to themselves for their agenda all in their entirety, the same way Democrats aren't either. But we mentioned the empathy gap before. Seems to care for the concerns of people, and that's where the Republicans, that's the worst performing number right now in national polls. It would do them a lot of good to come up with a better strategy, at least publicly, to handle these debates so that it's not seen as though, well, we're just cutting off the spigot because there are people who are abusing the system or because they can't handle this or because just throwing good money after bad. Throwing good money after bad really
when Rand
clanks
Paul
with
says,
people.
hey, I'm doing them a favor here, they're going to thank me later if I cut them off because, you know what, and if people want to do the math for how much you actually get in terms of unemployment and welfare and et cetera here, you try and live on that, okay? But anyway, that's not helping the Republican argument.
The messaging is wrong. As you said, the polling numbers have gone up. Well, they had to go up. They couldn't go down anymore. I mean, frankly, it was only like family and staffers that were supporting these guys. That's what it comes down to. So when you look at that, yes, there's a messaging problem. But I've always said, when you don't control the White House, you have a challenge because you've got a leader in the House, a leader in the Senate, and you've got an RNC. And you've got 3 different people trying to figure out what that message is. Right now, everyone's behind Obama from the Democratic side, and they put their messages together.
I just have take politics out of this for 1 second. What's the answer? Now, I don't suggest that the long-term answer, to be fair to Obi, is you just keep extending unemployment insurance in perpetuity. But if you cut them off, we already know there's certain there's certain populations. Can I finish? Yeah. There's certain populations they're not going to get retrained in this new. People have downside. They're hiring lower-paid employees.
What I'm saying is you don't want to have a situation where they have to be cut off. What you have to have is a situation that this is the way unemployment works. Okay. Prior to the economy falling through the floor, back in 2007, we didn't have this extended unemployment benefit. People lived in this country.
And there's a reason why we didn't have this extended unemployment benefit, because the unemployment rate was significantly lower than it is now. And we have always extended in our history the unemployment benefits when unemployment rates are as high as they are now. So the solution is actually pretty simple. You set a number, 6%, let's say, or 6.5%, or whatever you want the number to be. And as soon as the unemployment rate drops below that number, then you say, okay, 26 weeks is the cap. Yeah. But as long as the unemployment rate is higher than that number, you can continue to file for extended unemployment. And also, let's be honest about creating jobs, Obi. Let's not go cutting government jobs and saying, well, those aren't real jobs anyway.
Well, no, they are real jobs. We don't need as many as we have.
Let's also not overlook the fact that 200,000 people are going to lose their jobs because we're not extending these unemployment benefits.
This president says that paying unemployment is a job creator. If that was
it absolutely
if that was the mindset that this country should operate under, then why don't they send everybody checks every month for that purpose, and we can create more jobs?
Well, you'll enjoy this. When we come back, Obi, we'll talk about the problems for this president here. We're going to be talking about the second-term blues. It's not unique to President Obama, but he certainly, if you look at his numbers here, is having a rough go of it, as other predecessors have before him. We'll talk to a historian as to the whys behind this and also what he could do here to turn things around if history serves as a guide.